So let's go ahead and get started. First thing will be the call to order, roll call, and pledge of allegiance for the April 20, 2022 regular meeting of the TTSA Board of Directors. So with that, Rochelle, if you could do roll call.
Sure. Director Tresson.
Here.
Director Lewis.
Here.
Director Cox.
Yes.
And Director Smelser.
Yes, here.
Last but not least, President Wilkins.
Present. And I was going to suggest for the Pledge of Allegiance, if others want to mute, I can say the Pledge of Allegiance. That way we don't get the kind of triple feedback loop we get going sometimes. And you can join me in it, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Next on our agenda is AB 361 action. So this would be the Board of Directors considering finding by majority vote that we can continue to do virtual meetings like this one is, and as a result of the COVID emergency. So is there any, would anyone like to make a motion on this?
I'll make the motion that we approve the AB 361 action.
Thank you, Lane.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Dave Smeltzer. Is there any public comment on this, Rochelle?
Check that. I don't see any hands raised for public comment.
Okay. Seeing none, if there's no further discussion, those, could you take roll call, please, Rochelle?
Yes. Director Tresson.
Yes.
Director Lewis. Actually, I need to unmute a couple of people. There we go. Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Cox.
Yes.
Director Smelser. And President Wilkins.
Yes.
Okay.
I think David was
Motion
muted,
approved.
Rochelle, but I did see him acknowledge.
Yeah, I just got him unmuted, but I did see that. And motion approved.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is public comment. So this is an opportunity for any member of the public to make comments to the board for any item not on the agenda for up to 5 minutes in time. Is there any public comment, Rochelle?
We do not have any public comment.
Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda is professional achievements, awards, and anniversaries. And I believe Vicki will take the lead on this.
Yes, good morning, President Wilkins and directors. As we usually do, I would like to acknowledge several employees for their professional achievements, awards, and anniversaries this month. First off, we have a new employee, which is Jeff Tollefson. He is our new operator in training in the operations department. Welcome, Jeff. Several safety suggestion awards for the first quarter of 2022. And those came from Ryan Schultz, Anthony Salinas, Zeb Snyder, Kristen Davis, Ellen Ferrant, Dean Haynes, and Trevor Shamblin. So thank you to all of those people that submitted their safety suggestions and were received by the safety committee. And last but not least, we have a 10-year anniversary, and that would be Colin Fisher in the operations department. Colin is one of our operations shift supervisors, and I'd just like to thank everyone and acknowledge all of them, the new hires, the anniversaries, and those safety suggestions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Vicki. Any questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, let's move on down to our consent calendar. Is there any member of the board or any member of staff who would like to pull an item from consent? Seeing none, Rochelle, is there any member of the public? Yes, Dave.
I just have questions about on a couple of items. How many? I can't figure it out, or if there is a something in there about how many of the items are purchased. I see one thing that I was amazed at was the cost of a SCBA tank. Is that one tank or is that more than one?
So Dave, is that for item one under general fund warrants?
Yes,
So you'd like to pull that for some brief discussion and
Yes.
question? Okay,
just a clarification.
okay, so we can go ahead and pull item one. Rochelle, is there any member of the public that would like to pull item two, since we'll be pulling item one?
We don't have any public comment for this item.
Okay, would anyone on the board care to make a motion to approve item two on the consent calendar?
Correction on item 1 on ratify. Crystal, do we have any new warrants that were presented beyond the finance committee's time reviewing them? No.
we do not.
All right. I'll make the motion that we ratify do the consent calendars item 1 and 2.
I think we're just doing two because I think Dave wanted to have some discussion on item one.
Okay. All right. So I'll ratify the financial statement then.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Blake. If there's no further discussion, if you could do roll call, Rochelle?
Yes, Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes,
Motion approved.
great. Then we'll go back to item one. I think Dave had a couple of questions on some of the items in there.
Yeah, on the page from Granger, we purchased it looks to me like one SCBA cylinder for $9,684.86. I was going, holy moly. That's just a replacement cylinder? Or is that for just one?
That's actually for 5,
Perfect. Okay. So I just didn't see how to determine how many were purchased on any one of these. I think that might be a good thing to show those numbers, but that's fine.
Okay.
I was going, wow, we can't afford a fire department.
Did you have any other questions?
No, I'm good.
I'll make the motion as part of the finance committee recommendation for approval for ratified payments of the general fund warrants, having both Director Tresson and I having reviewed them.
I'll second that.
Thanks. Motion by Director Lewis, second by Director Tresson. Rochelle, is there any public comment?
No public comment for this item.
Okay, thank you. If you could take the roll call.
Sure. Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes,
Motion approved. And that's also moving the ratification of payment of general fund warrants to the regular agenda.
thank you, Rochelle.
Mhm.
All right, next on our regular agenda, item one is a report out from the March 16th, 2022 closed session meeting. I'm not sure if LaRue's handling that or if Dick's handling that.
I'll go ahead, I'll take that. Good morning, directors. At the conclusion of the closed session of the March 16 meeting, the meeting was adjourned without providing a report from closed session. I just want to report that there was no action taken after closed session.
Great. Thanks, LaRue. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting on March 16th, 2022.
So moved.
Moved by Director Cox,
Second.
seconded by Director Lewis. Is there any public comment on the minutes, Rochelle?
No, sir, no public comment.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further discussion, if you could take roll call, Rochelle?
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes,
Motion approved.
thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the is approval to enter into a contract with CNW Construction, Inc. to perform the 2022 control room upgrades project. And who's taking the lead on this one?
Could you take this, Jay, please?
Yeah, of course. Good morning, President Wilkins, directors. Before you again today is the 2022 control room upgrades project. As you recall, this went before the board in December for approval to solicit for bids. After going through 2 bid cycles, we were not able to solicit any interested contractors. At the approval of the board of directors at the February meeting, we got approval to work with contractors to receive proposals for the work. We reached out to 9 contractors, 2 of which submitted proposals for the work. One was CNW Construction out of Rescue, California for $167,955.90. And the second was GLA Morris out of Truckee for $176,851.68. The project fieldwork is scheduled to commence between September 19th and November 4. The lowest proposal price is about 13% higher than the engineer's estimate, but it is within what we consider a reasonable cost or price to do the work. CNW has performed work for TTSA in the past on the admin building office remodel project, and now it's a successful project. So the recommendation here is for management and staff recommend approval to enter into contract with CNW to perform the 2022 control room upgrades project up to an amount of $185,000. So that's their proposal plus about a 10% contingency.
Great. Thanks, Jay.
You're welcome.
Any questions or comments from board members? Lane?
Yeah, Jay, based on that contract we discussed before back in December about lighting upgrades, was any of that included as in there?
So the lighting upgrades project is being handled as a separate project under maintenance to redo lighting throughout the plant. Richard, do you have any updates that you can give Lane, Director Lewis on that?
Okay.
Sure. We continue to do the LED upgrades in-house as we have available time to do the different rooms. And we've talked about this with Jay. When the project comes due, we'll go in first and we'll update the lighting in-house instead of having the contractor do it.
Yeah, I noticed that we had some electrical work performed in that bid. So, you know, whether it be more cost effective on either way, if you want to add lighting or whatever for the control room, it seems like it would be less expensive with doing it with the contractor that you have on board.
Yeah, I mean, our experience is to date, let's just say within the last year, we've been astounded by the prices that we've been getting by contractors. And one of our projects, our electrical costs were estimated to be half of what the contractor ended up bidding. So in terms of labor, I think we're in a situation right now where it's probably more cost effective for our staff to do that work.
Okay, so you know, as long as the staff, I mean, I'd prefer it to be done in-house. I mean, it's a lot less expensive, but you know, as long as that work's being done when the construction's taking place, so we're not going back and having to redo something, that'd be ideal.
Yeah, as Richard mentioned, it's scheduled. He's scheduling this work to happen before our contractor goes in and does the work.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Lane. Any other questions or comments from directors? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this, Rochelle?
There's no public comment.
Okay. Would anyone care to make a motion?
Also move.
Moved by Director Smeltzer,
I'll second.
seconded by Director Lewis. Thank you. There's no further comment. Rochelle, if you could take roll call.
Yes. Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Excellent. Next is approval to purchase 2 Taylor-Dunn electric utility carts.
Richard, would you mind taking this?
Sure. Morning, President Wilkins, Board of Directors. Before you for approval is the purchase of 2 Taylor-Dunn electric utility carts to use by staff throughout the facility. This is part of a multi-year project to replace the older electric carts that date back 20, 21 years. So each year we've been budgeting for 2. This was a budgeted amount. It is slightly over the budgeted amount of 25,000, but we have sufficient funds in the maintenance budget to cover that additional $459. Can I take any questions?
Yeah, how many Taylor-Dunn cars, electric cars do you have currently in the fleet?
I'd be guessing to give you a number, but the majority of our fleet are Taylor-Dunn. So this will be the 3rd purchase we've done. So we've done 6, 7. I'd say we're somewhere around 13 Taylor-Dunns, and then we have some club cars that are still in the fleet that will end up getting phased out.
Right. I mean, these are all electric carts. As far as battery, basically it's battery maintenance on these things. Changing out. I mean, what's the life of your batteries on a TD cart? Is it 5 or 6 years?
We're getting probably in the neighborhood of 3 years out of a set of batteries.
That's it, huh?
Yeah. And some sets last better than others. I think it's just, the production quality of batteries has changed a lot over the years. I don't think they're nearly as good as they used to be. And that's why we're seeing a year or so less than what you would expect.
Well, as far as, I mean, I got a fleet of electric carts also, but the biggest thing with the TDs, they last forever. They're pretty much bulletproof out there. They're the Toyota of the industry as far as length and lasting and less maintenance. What I'm thinking of, do they offer the lithium batteries within those carts?
They offer the lead acid and they offer the gel batteries. No lithiums yet.
No lithiums, huh?
Mhm.
Boy, because that's been the big difference in the golf cart end of it, not in the commercial electrical, but with the lithium, your battery's going to last 8 to 10 years. It doesn't work for golf carts because they usually get beat up before that period of time, and you have to have a good presence. But with commercial vehicles, in those TD Dunns, they last forever. It seems like the upgraded batteries would be the way to go. I can't believe they don't offer a lithium extra on those carts because you're going with regular cadmium-based batteries, right?
Yeah, we found that the price difference between the lead and the gels didn't warrant it. The gels don't last that much longer than the lead acid, so we've been sticking with the lead acid batteries. But it would be nice.
You're saying lithium is not available on those carts.
The last time we got a quote from them, lithium was not an option, just the gel and the lead acid.
All right, I'm just thinking lithium would be if you you go down to Cart Barn down in Reno, and there are some battery suppliers for our carts that you can buy lithium, and it does last a lot longer. But with TDs, those things will last forever, and so I get the longer lasting batteries if possible. But that the bid price here is what it is. So.
Yeah, and again, we're using the Sourcewell government purchasing program, so we're getting that government discount. And we can certainly look into the lithium batteries for replacements, but from the factory, they only offer the 2.
Well, what are you doing? What are you doing with your surplus carts?
We got 3 of them that'll be coming up for auction here in the next couple weeks.
Okay, you don't want to keep any of those as backup and have a lower push that fleet out a little bit more, or is battery life gone on those also?
Battery life is gone, and the 3 that we're auctioning off, hopefully no one's listening that wants to buy them, but they're pretty well done. They're some of the older ones, and they're the short bed. So We've been standardizing for all the crews to go with the long bed so they can carry their tools, have a toolbox mounted on the cart with them instead of having to just carry a tool bag.
Okay. I mean, because a lot of times if those replacement, on the old carts to keep them for replacement parts on the new ones, but you're saying they changed, it's a slightly different model than what you had you had the shorter beds, not the longer beds, correct?
Yeah, 2 short beds are being auctioned off, 1 long bed, and their vintage is so old that through the years Taylor Dunn's changed, like the rear axle's different in them now, gearbox for the steering's different, so
Right.
the part changeability is no longer there.
Okay. They're running on flat surface, so gosh, I can't see the rear ends going out much on those, and being electric motors, seem to be, they last forever. So,
Yeah, just with the new rear end, they mount the electric motor different than they did on the old ones, so you
Oh.
lose that compatibility.
Okay. But, next time around, check to see if there's lithium available.
Absolutely.
So I'll make the motion for approval.
Second,
Thanks, Director. Thanks for the motion by Director Lewis and the second by Director Cox. Is there any public comment on this, Rochelle?
There's no public comment on this item.
Is there any other board comment on this? All right, seeing none, if you could take roll call, Rochelle?
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Next is approval for HDR Engineering, Inc. to perform a sewer service charge study.
Thank you. At the last month's board meeting, there was discussion about hiring a potential consultant to perform a review of our sewer service study, as well as our connection fee. At the conclusion of our discussion, there was direction to obtain a proposal from HDR for each of those studies. So what we have here is the first one, which is for the sewer service charge study. Their proposed estimate fee is about $35,000. There's a time frame expected about 4 to 6 months to complete the study. Just to provide some historical data, the last time that we had a change in our sewer service charge was back in 2010 for taxable service areas and 2014 for non-taxable service areas. So what you have in here is the proposal. HDR has done work for us on a connection fee study in the past, and they've done other work for our local member districts. So I believe that they're a viable option to perform the study. And with that, I recommend that we do hire HDR to perform the sewer service charge study with an amount of $38,500, which would be approximately 10% above their proposal for contingencies and extra work. With that, I can take any questions on the proposal.
Thanks, LaRue. Questions or comments from board members? Blake?
Yeah, I'm glad to see us taking this step. LaRue, thanks for the little bit of history on our the history of rate changes. I don't know whether this is part of the HDR scope or not, but I'd be curious to get, even a longer history of our rate changes over time. And again, I'm not sure, I didn't know that I saw it in there, and it's probably something we could do in-house just as easily. I'd be curious to do some benchmarking as we enter this process to just see what our sewer service charges for treatment are compared to some other treatment areas. I know it's hard to do an apples to apples because treatment is dependent upon the level of treatment. A pond system compared to a advanced treatment system like we've got at TTSA is not a good comparison, but there should be some decent data, that's somewhat local, Northern California, Nevada, that we could kind of see where we lie relative to others. And so if that's not part of the scope, and I apologize for not knowing whether that's a part of it, it would certainly be some data that I think would be good to have for the board as well as, for the public as we go forward. I just don't know where we stand relative to other agencies. And again, knowing the history, but I concur with moving forward with this based on the fairly large price tag we saw in needs for rehabilitation and replacement of the existing facilities that we saw in the sewer master plan. And so the timing is good to review our sewer service charges to make sure we have adequate reserves going forward.
Just so you know, we do have a list of the history of the sewer service charges commencing with the formation of the agency.
Yeah.
We were going to do that ourselves. We've also looked into increases in the ENR CCI and would apply that to the rate just to see if it's kept up on an annual basis with that rate. And we've also have directions to go ahead and contact other agencies. As a matter of fact, the ones that are on our compensation and classification study to see what their cost per treatment are. We plan on doing that in-house, and I will be providing that information to HDR to perform this. So it's not in the scope of work, but I did ask for that 10% buffer, and we will be providing that data to them to include it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So we're getting Sean Korn on this, correct?
He is listed as one of the team members to perform the work. Yes, I think he is the project manager, team lead.
Right, and being in the last, doing it in 2018 here on, I mean, seems like you'd have enough data already that, you're saying they're saying 4 to 6 months before we get the report back. Is that correct?
That is the listed schedule he has, yes.
Okay. And, I mean, we had a lot of growth here between 2018 and 2021, based, on what the connections are and stuff like that. And service fees have been going up, haven't been increased, but I just look at it, what type of information is he going to be taking, Sean's going to be taken off from, is he going to go strictly on what the master plan was proposed and how to implement those capital projects over the 25-year history? Or does staff have any further recommendations on the amount of some of the projects, in there that may be pushed out a little further? I mean, for one, the clarifiers, if we're coding the clarifiers every, 15, 20 years and getting the, where it shows replacements in those clarifiers, within the same period that we've done the preventative maintenance, are we getting extended life on those to push things out? I mean, how do those things reflect into the amount? Because, the cost of clarifiers replacement and stuff like that is extremely expensive.
Yeah, so he will use the master plan as a basis. He'll also use some of our historical data, also some of the member district data as it pertains to growth. The staff has included some of the projects such as the clarifying coatings into the CIP, which is part of the master plan. And there are some other additional work or changes that we are going to recommend be altered from the CIP. So Sean or HDR will be using the CIP as a basis. However, they will be receiving input on us, how we want to move a couple projects, because there are a few projects we could postpone a couple years down the road.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the, on some of these maintenance projects that we've been doing, because we've been spending a lot of money on coatings and stuff like that, that will extend the life of those units that we have in there. And if that's been reflective of the, of the Carrillo report, if it's reflective in the, I didn't see it that much just, in the Carrillo report as far as, because I saw those implementations of the clarifiers down the road, but we just finished coating a couple of them. And, do we get another 20, 25 years of life out of that when it's done? And I want to make sure that, then when we do a project and spend that amount of maintenance money on these things, that we also project out the life of that facility after we've done it in as much of accuracy as you can. So we're not doing a maintenance project and then 10 years later we're doing a brand new capital project. That means we didn't get any useful life out of that maintenance project that we did to extend the life of that project. So I just want to make sure that we look at those things and we're getting the useful life is accurate on these capital improvement projects that Carrillo put in there.
I understood, and we will confirm that if there's been work done to it where we've given it some extra life, that's taken into consideration in the study. Without a
Yes,
doubt.
so I can add to that. During the Carrillo's condition assessment was done early in the project. You know, a couple, I'd say maybe, I don't know, a year and a half before the project was finalized. We kept them abreast of all the things we were doing up to the completion of the master plan. So they were factoring in these recent projects where we were coding these clarifiers, and they made adjustments accordingly. So my point being is that the master plan has been reflective of the work that's been done to date.
Because if we're looking at 4 to 6 months to get the report out, and then having that report, then going over that report and bringing it to the public and educating the public about the needs that we have and what it's going to take to accomplish those needs, and the transparency from TTSA to the public to be supportive of if it does take a rate increase, to be supportive of that. It's getting the information up, educating, being clear to the public what's needed, and also not tripping over any of the 218 requirements that we have to do this in a timely manner. So, I mean, you're looking at something that if they're taking 4 to 6 months in doing this, I mean, we're looking at probably a year's time before anything gets implemented. Is that correct? I mean, somewhat of a timeline.
Correct. We expect that if there should be an increase, it would not be implemented until next July.
And what you've told Blake and I in the finance committee, as far as the amount of capital projects that Carrillo recommended in the first couple of years, that we have enough right now to not, to still keep pace with those capital requirements, almost what they have in the plan during this period. Is that correct?
Correct.
The next year or two?
For the next couple of years, we have enough capital to subsidize those, correct?
Now, when we say that, we've got to look at that as far as we have the capital, but I mean, obviously, some of those projects are going to take down the reserve amounts, correct?
Yes, that is correct. So when you look at the whole picture, we need to look at it for the full 25 years, where the first 5 years in detail is 218 limits our ability to make rate changes for that time period. And we need to look at the projects that listed in CIP, any changes our staff may have, and then make a determination if we move any of those projects around, and find out if and how much we may want to raise rates, if it's going to require any capital borrowing, any other finance options. So there's a lot of variables that need to be contended with. But to get to your specific question, for the next couple of years, there is no immediate need to have it done tomorrow to take care of the next 2 years worth of projects.
Okay, on the financing options, are they going to recommend financing options with to accomplish these capital improvement projects?
I think they're going to look into, I think it's going to vary on the feedback received. If the agency wishes to proceed on a cash pay-as-you-go, that may require more capital upfront. They may recommend borrowing, which would have pushed the cost further on down. But their scope of work isn't really to tell us which options to take. They're going to tell us what, based on the projects we have, this is what the cost is going to be to cover these projects. They will have two board meetings where they will receive board input. And at that time, the board can decide or make a recommendation that we'd like to go all cash, or maybe fund half of it with cash, which would affect the rates, and then finance the rest. Those are numerous steps down the road. The study's going to start with collection of data, looking at the projects and having a few preliminary meetings and get some input and then go from there. So we'll have plenty of time for feedback from the board and to receive direction.
Okay, because the last time basically on the plan expansion, with the $50 million plan expansion, we went out for financing on that. When you look at extending the plant life for X number of years, and then on capital, we've been outside of that, we've been on a pay-as-you-go basis. So I'd like to see both ends looked at, because is it fair for us to go pay-as-you-go when you have life of what we're putting in there for 20 to 30 years down the road? The person paying up front for the life of something down the road, financing makes sense. So we got to look at everything available to us, to meet our needs for our capital in the future.
Most definitely, yes.
Thanks, Lane. So this LaRue, I know the next item on the agenda has to do with the connection fee. This study is our monthly, I know it's collected on the tax roll for the most part, but our monthly sewer service charge, and looking at the adequacy of that. And that revenue stream doesn't just pay for capital. I know there's a lot of discussion about our capital needs for repair and replacement of the facility, but it also pays for salaries, benefits, day-to-day needs, and electricity, chemicals, sludge hauling, all that stuff. And with the, CPI and the cost of these projects coming in higher, it makes sense that we're looking at, we can't just keep charging the same thing and see our costs go up regardless of the capital. It's important that we're taking a look and making sure that we're keeping our revenue adequate to cover our operational costs, as well as these, large set of capital projects as well. And so, and whenever you do a study like this, there's a lot of crystal ball work you do. We're projecting what the costs are going to be into the next 5, 10, 20 years so that we have revenue. And I would think that, HDR will have some level of a sensitivity analysis, because you don't know exactly what those are going to be, and that we can look at and play a little bit of what if our capital costs come in 10% lower than expected, not talking necessarily about specific projects, but just overall, how does that affect things? And same with, what is the COLAs or the cost of living or the CPI that we're going to see in other costs, and that we can hopefully play some of those games, saying what ifs and see how that fluctuates, so that we feel, whatever we land on, we're comfortable with, we're, taking making prudent assumptions about the future. And, if there is an adjustment in rates, that it's the right rate, to meet, these assumptions. Because none of the future costs are written in stone. There's going to be some variability. And we've worked with Sean here at TSD, and he's been really good at, being able to kind of play those scenarios out so that you feel comfortable about where you end up. And what, if you're off by a little bit in one assumption, it's a percentage or something like that, how that might impact the numbers. So again, I support this effort.
Yeah, aren't we limited on the connection fees to capacity issues as far as capital projects with what those fees could be used for?
Those are restricted funds for the capacity. You are correct, Lane.
Okay, good.
And what Blake stated about the sewer service charges, it'll cover the operation as well as the capital improvement projects, the CIP projects.
Okay, yeah, because we got 17, 18 million in that, that's where we got the money. In the capacity end of it, and a lot of it that, a few of those TRI projects are capacity issues. So, it's looking at which funds we're using is that the connection funds that's fund 6 or 10?
2. Fund two.
Oh, 2. Okay. So those funds, can only be utilized for certain specific projects that are capacity related, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we refer to those, you'll hear us use the term restricted funds.
Right. And the regular operation funds are sewer rates.
Yeah, the sewer rates, ad valorem tax, we refer to those as the unrestricted funds. And then like so they'll cover O&M and replacement projects.
Yeah, I just want to be clear that those connection fees are capacity issue related projects.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So we do have the study and proposal in front of us, and the requested action is to receive approval for the amount listed, which was the $38,500, which again, as I stated, is about approximately 10% above their proposal cost.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dale.
Hey, I got one more question there with regards to, is there a time in there for, if we do go to a rate increase for our consultant to be there for the 218 procedure?
Yes, sir. As they currently have in their two periods to attend board meetings. One is to provide the first initial feedback from the directors, and then the second one for the Prop 218 to adopt the study. And with the additional 10%, if we do desire a third time, we'll be able to have funds for that as well.
Okay, because I think it'll be a lengthy period going through with the public, and I believe we should have enough money in there for our consultant during that period of time, just to be as transparent as possible to the public, because the public may have quite a bit of questions coming forth.
I agree. Yes.
Rochelle, is there any public comment on this?
No, there's no public comment on this item.
Great. Is there any, I believe we had a motion by Director Cox and a second by Director Trezum.
That's correct.
Is there any further board discussion?
Just, LaRue, I would, maybe getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but this engaging the public with the sewer service charge study as opposed to the connection fee study. The stakeholders are all our existing customers. It's a with the connection fee, it's the building community, and there's some associations connected to that are easy to kind of engage with as stakeholders. With the sewer service charge, it's just every existing property owner out there that we're connected to, and a little more challenging to sort of engage them. But we may consider wanting to have some press release that we're embarking on this effort and get that out in the Sierra Sun, just to try and be as transparent as possible and let the public know. But it'd be interesting to get that benchmarking stuff and the history of our rate changes as well, to incorporate in that. But somewhere in the next several months, as we embark on this process, I think some sort of press release would probably be a good idea.
Don't we end up having a public hearing on any rate increases before we move forward? Or is Proposition 218 all we have to comply with?
As part of 218, we do have to have a public hearing. I think what Blake's referring to is just kind of getting ahead of it. I think, like you said, a couple months into the process is when we should consider it. And we can post something, give some details. We can explain our current situation, where we were, where we are, and where we need to be. But again, I think we need to initiate the study, get some of the data behind it. And then once we provide that release, provide the questions, because if we don't, then I think it's going to invite more questions. And I'd rather be able to have it all handy and able to address any concerns the public might have.
Thank you. Is there any further questions or comment from the board members? We've already taken public comment. If there's no further questions or comment, Rochelle, if you could take roll call.
Yes. Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Great. Related item 6 is approval of HDR Engineering, Inc. to perform a sewer connection fee study.
Correct. So this is the other half. Their proposal amount is $20,240. They have a time frame of approximately 3 months. To give some history, HDR did the last report for us back in 2018, 2019. Their cost at that time was $20,000. So the slight increase of a few $100 is reasonable. And what we did with the 2019 report was that we went from a fixed flat rate of not $5,000 per single family residence to a variable fee, meaning a base fee plus a square foot cost per square footage. So similar to the sewer service connection study, HDR, I think, are more than competent and have the ability to perform this. They've done it for us in the past. We were happy with their work. And they've also done so for other member districts around the area here. The recommendation is to go ahead and have HDR perform the sewer connection fee study in the amount of $23,000, again, with approximately 10% above their proposal. With that, I can take some questions as well.
Thanks, LaRue. Questions or comments? Blake?
You know, in the finance committee meeting, Lane and I are in, you know, LaRue had shared some information. And while the sewer rate study definitely seemed like something we needed to look into pretty quickly, the sewer connection fee study, Lane had mentioned our, I think Fund 2, we've got $18 million in reserve, and the sewer master plan identified a number of capacity related projects, but not a lot. There were definitely some. And so I think that we should do a sewer connection fee study to assure we have adequacy. The timeliness of it is probably not as critical. And I guess I would just want to make sure that doing the connection fee study doesn't slow down our rate study. There's no reason to, it's nice to do them together, but there's no real inherent reason why they need to be looked at, in tandem. And so, LaRue, I would look to you to decide whether, I think it's good to do this, but it didn't sound like there was a timeliness to this. And I'd rather not have our time and brain energy and the consultant's time, focusing, getting caught up in the connection fee study when it does not have the timeliness that the other one does. And so I know that our direction to you was based on the rates, the master plan, solicit proposals for both of these, but given the information you provided, in hindsight, I wonder whether it's prudent to go with both of them at the same time. Whether, from a timing standpoint and staff and focus. So those are my comments.
I can relay and share that the priority lies with the sewer service charge study. I do not know what their workload is there. But if HDR is able to perform one, then the sewer service charge study will take precedence. If we're able to perform both, and I'll ask them and receive their feedback from it, I would let them perform both. But I would rely and defer to them to make that decision. But I will share the priority.
And I think that should be the board's priority as well, is really I think the focus needs to be on that first study, the sewer service rate study, and less on this connection fee study. So
is there a preference to do them one after another, or if possible, and without compromise, to perform them in parallel?
Well, my question would be, with regards to 218 requirement, they would be taken separately anyway, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so, you're not getting any benefit by doing them both together because they got to be voted on. Because we'd have to approve them separately anyway, going to the public. And, Blake and I had that discussion in the finance committee meeting about, the trend lines in Fund 2 are nothing like the trend lines as far as the operation maintenance. There is a downward trend there. And the trend line in Fund 2 is more or less flat right now. So, there's more emphasis on the sewer rates than there are on for the long term and in making sure that we have the money for the capital projects and the operation and maintenance that go along with it.
So to answer your question, LaRue, if we can do both in parallel, that would be my preference. If that starts to compromise the rate study, then I would agree that prioritizing the rate study would make sense.
That's a consensus. I'll defer it to HDR, but pass on that message.
Other questions or comments from board members? Rochelle, is there any public comment on this?
There's no public comment on this item.
Clarification maybe from Dick. Would the connection fee study require a 218 hearing? That would only be the rate study, correct, or both?
That is correct, Dan. There's a simple public hearing process that goes with the connection charges, but it's outside the Prop 218 procedures and limitations.
Okay, thanks.
Well, my thing is, I mean, HDR has to take into effect the connection fees because the projects, there's a certain amount of projects that Carrillo identified as capacity issues all have to be melded into the overall structure of getting to the point of financing these or funding these capital improvements. So they do need to be taken a look at it as far as the picture, but it sounds like, I mean, we do not want to hinder the timeliness of the rate study.
Understood.
Okay. Would anyone care to make a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Director Cox,
I'll second.
seconded by Director Schmelzer. I believe we did open this for public comment already, Rochelle, and there was none.
That is correct.
So with that, if you could take roll call, please.
Yes. Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Great. Next item is discussion and possible action on nomination of Special District Commissioner to Placer LAFCO.
As the subject suggests here, Placer County LAFCO is soliciting nominations for the Special District Commissioner to fill the regular Special District seat. The elected representative will serve a 4-year term beginning May 1st of this year and ending May 1st of 2026. We currently have Mr. Rick Stevens, who serves as their Special District alternative for Placer County LAFCO. The recommendation I have is that we nominate Mr. Rick Stevens to be the regular Special District seat full-time. What's attached in the package here is a brief bio on him. He currently serves as a board director on the Tahoe Truckee Airport District, and like I said, already serves as a Special District alternative for Placer County LAFCO. So the recommendation here is to nominate Rick Stevens. And then once LAFCO gets all the nominations, they will go ahead and follow up with us and provide a list of that, and then we would take a vote as to who that would be.
Okay.
I'll make that motion to elect Rick Stevens as the LAFCO representative.
I'll second.
Thank you, Lane. Thank you, Dave. Is there any public comment on this? Rochelle, I'll come back to you in a moment, Blake.
No public comment.
Blake, question?
Yeah, I just find it a little bit strange that we're not voting to elect Rick Stevens. This is a vote to nominate him. Typically, he'd be nominated by his agency he works for, not, were you requested to nominate him, LaRue? I find it odd that we would be the agency nominating the airport board member. I have no problem with voting for him once nominated, but I find it.
Blake, I think you're correct. I believe the airport district has nominated Rick Stevens to be on the LAFCO board, and Rick has reached out to us to ask if we're willing to support that nomination as opposed to actually making the nomination. So I think you're correct, Blake.
Okay.
I don't believe we actually, I don't even believe we have a vote. I believe the vote happens elsewhere, if I'm not mistaken, LaRue.
I think we do, since Placer County is in our area. We do have that, but we do have a vote, as I understand it.
Okay.
So yeah, so it feels like the action, I think Rick is just trying to garner support, once he's nominated to be elected. But I don't think that, it's necessary or necessarily really appropriate for us to be nominating him. I think, like Dan said, he's already been nominated by the airport district for this role. So I guess this would be a contingent, perhaps a contingent action on our part to nominate him if he's not been nominated by his board. But I'd be kind of odd to nominate another board members, another agency's board member also. So I would not. I would not support this action. I think that it'll come back when we're electing it. And I think we do have a vote in electing the actual special district representation on Placer County LAFCO, and that'll come up, in a couple months probably. But my guess is he's already nominated. And this would be if any of us wanted to be potentially nominated for that LAFCO position. And
Yeah.
that
LaRue, could you provide clarification on that, please?
Yeah, he has been nominated. We don't have to pass this through now. If he's been nominated, which he has from his airport district, we can come back to it, circle back for a vote at that time.
So, yeah, so Rick actually emailed me. So he had gotten in touch with the Tahoe City Public Utility District Board of Directors, asking if they would be supportive of his nomination. Rick reached out to me as a TTSA representative, inquired if we at TTSA would be willing to kind of support him in his nomination. I told him that I, as an individual, would, and that I would request LaRue put the item in front of the entire board. So I think, again, I believe Blake is correct. We're not nominating Rick to the LAFCO board. We would be taking an action to support his nomination. And I suppose if we have a future vote on who gets elected, we could take that action now to identify to LaRue that we would garner or pass our vote on towards Director Stevens.
I recommend we just table this item, and then when the nomination comes through, then I'll bring it back for the board for discussion and election at that time.
Okay.
I think that's prudent. I don't know what other local public agencies may be nominating somebody, and so I don't want to, until we see the full slate of candidates, I think it's premature to. I support Rick's nomination, but I think we wait and see for the election, and I do believe that comes back to us.
Okay. Very well.
I have direction. Thank you.
Okay, I will void that motion and second approval and note that the item was tabled.
And is there any public comment on this, Rochelle?
There is no public comment.
Okay. Okay, so no action on this item. Next is discussion of methods for receiving public comment.
At the last board meeting, there was discussion on returning to in-person meetings and to discuss how we would receive public comment. So you have the staff right up here. Just to recap real briefly, for in-person meetings, for written comments, they are to submit them to Rochelle Chavez or by mail. There's a deadline of the Tuesday before the meeting at 3 p.m. Those are for the written comments. And if attending in person, for verbal comment, while they're attending the board meeting, as you know, they would address the board at the podium during public comment as well as during the specific agenda items. When it comes to the video conference meetings, such as this one, again, they can still submit written comments in a similar fashion, sending them to Ms. Chavez as well as mailing them to the agency. And then for the verbal comment component, they can provide comment during public comment and during the agenda items by raising their hand. And then we would call them in order. So we currently have options and methods for receiving public comment for in-person meetings and video teleconference meetings. Again, the item agenda was just to have the discussion and see if there was any input that the board of directors wanted to have.
Okay.
And just I think it's important, being a public agency, that we, are available to solicit and hear comments from the public. And I wouldn't want to curtail that. This item has, I guess the question would be, LaRue or Rochelle, have there been questions? That the outline that you proposed looks good to me, but I'm wondering whether there's been incidents that, would fall outside of those bounds, or why this has come up, that, alternatives that, this may impact, that we're not aware of when we take action on this. Has there been, public comments that have come in after 3 p.m. on the day before the board meeting, that, are gonna not be heard? Or I just want to make sure we understand what we're taking action on. And particularly, we've had a lot of public comment over the last several years, how this would have changed things.
So as I understand, we haven't received any comment past the deadline. However, if we were, we would still provide them to the board of directors upon receipt. We provide a deadline, so it allows the board of directors time to review the comments. What we don't want to do is give it to you 5 minutes before the board meeting, because you may not have time to read them. But if we were to receive them 5 minutes for the board meeting, we would forward them to you. And this isn't really an action item. It's just to revisit how we currently receive public comment, to make sure that it's still an acceptable method. And if there's any other variations, we can have that discussion. Like I said, we've had discussions historically in the past, but I think what we have now is more than capable and meets the requirements for receiving public comment. I've seen no issues with it over the past meetings.
Okay, and again, the proposal seems very reasonable to me. Obviously, public comments, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're negative and can be contentious. And so, Dick, I don't know whether you've had a chance to look at this item and make sure that, particularly on the items where perhaps they're being critical of the agency, that we're not creating a position where we're unlawfully restricting public comment by these guidelines, and that would potentially get us, in trouble down the road.
I have reviewed the memo that's in the packet and have no comments on it. Your practices comply with the Brown Act and other laws. In fact, you have various opportunities for the public to comment, which really go above and beyond the Brown Act requirements. There's several ways for public members to have input to the board, and so you are compliant.
Okay, thank you. So LaRue, no action, or?
No, I did not set up for no action. The direction was just to have the discussion, because there was some comments from the public last time, and I believe the board was just trying to make sure they were being addressed.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this item? Is there any public comment, Rochelle?
There's no public comment regarding this item.
Okay, thank you. All right, next on our agenda is discussion of in-person board of directors meetings.
So this is our standing agenda item. Last month we had made a direction to have it in person. However, that was changed, as you know, and I recommend that we also continue next month to have a teleconference meeting, a Zoom meeting, simply because there are increases in COVID, which are attributed to this BA.2 subvariant of Omicron. So the recommendation I have is to continue next month with a Zoom meeting, and again to next month revisit this agenda item again to see how we'd like to proceed with the following month.
Okay, other directors, you comfortable with that? Okay, so we'll plan on doing our May meeting via Zoom then. Okay.
Understood, thank you.
Is there any public comment on this?
There is no public comment for this item.
Okay, thank you. I believe next is department reports, and we'll start off with the operations department.
Good morning, President Wilkins, Board of Directors. Michael Peak, Operations Manager. For the Operations Department report for March, all plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. Operations summary, plant performed well through the month. We continue to add sodium hydroxide to the effluent to maintain a 7 pH. a neutral pH on the effluent. A water information management system, a WIMS software program has been selected. Annual trend analysis was completed and submitted to the State Water Resources Control Board, the Lahontan region. For the laboratory summary, the Laboratory Information Management System, LIMS, implementation is ongoing. The lab director is working with the vendor now to complete, and the expected completion date would be June 22nd. Staff continue preparation for the laboratory quality manual and other documents in accordance with the NELAC Institute TNI standards. We're approximately 40% done, completed at this point, and the agency expects that TNI completion by the end of the calendar year. Is there any questions or comments for the operations department report?
I have a question, Mike. So the addition of the caustic to the final effluent, I think that was done to basically see if that affected the low pH readings we were getting at the well, I believe well 31. And it seems like there's a correlation there. Is that your assessment as well?
I think it's hard to attribute a correlation there. Last month, without making any changes as far as our addition of maintaining that neutral water, we did have some dips at the well 31. We stayed above our limit, but we got a lot closer to that lower limit again. So, you know, again, is that contributable? Is the caustic addition attributable to or correlate to pH control? Is really hard to monitor. I'd be happy to bring back some. We can try giving some graphs and charts next month to kind of show the above gradient and well 31 and you know, just our effluent pH readings to do a little bit of a comparison, but it's really hard to say that is actually affecting or has that overall effect on that groundwater.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments from other board members for Mike?
Well, does that, you know, by continuing on that caustic that we're putting in to raise the pH, is that affecting the nutrient uptake in the SAT system? I mean, how much does that fluctuate?
So it has no bearing on nutrient removal.
Okay.
For the SAT system. That's a biological system that has, you know, changed, as we discussed before, has changed over the years with us running the plant with BNR and different, you know, different aspects that have changed over the years. We've seen changes in that SAT system for biological consumption of basically nitrogen. We've seen changes, but the caustic, maintaining that effluent pH does not affect that biological, or should have very little effect on the biological, or at least we haven't seen anything where it affected the biological portions of that SAT system for less or more nutrient removal as far as nitrogen.
Yeah, because you know, 20 years ago, we're with Richard Sweatich there, you know, giving us all these studies on that SAT and the different issues that affect the bugs or the nitrogen uptake in that SAT system. You know, definitely, you know, the chlorine going in there was an issue at one time. And seems like it's pretty much leveling out now as far as, I mean, are we putting the same amount of caustic in that effluent every month, or is that just I mean, does that become a standard operating procedure?
The amount that's used will vary on what the pH, the amount of water that we're treating, and also the pH that goes through the filters and is going out the effluent pipe. So it will vary a little bit to maintain that neutral pH, but
Okay.
it's relatively consistent. I can get some numbers for you on what our usages are for the
Well,
different.
it seems, I mean, it seems to be working as far as we haven't, we haven't had a go below our discharge requirement 6.5 since you've been adding that to it. So it's working, but what's the long-term solution here? Putting that into the system on a regular basis?
Long-term, maybe, maybe not. Again, we don't know for sure that that's what you could say, that if we hadn't added any caustic, we might not have during this period of time dropped below our 6.5 limit either.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, yes, this is exactly what has corrected that or changed it or the reason, because there were periods before where we didn't put any caustic solution to the effluent to try to control pH at the effluent, and we didn't drop below our requirements either. So, it's there's other factors in play that we've talked about, TDS additions and stuff like that. We're trying to minimize as much of that as we can, but
Okay,
Good. Any other questions?
thank you.
for Mike? Seeing none, let's move to the maintenance department report.
Morning again, President Wilkins, Board of Directors. For the numbers for the month. Again, numbers continue to fluctuate as we transition from our old CMMS system to the new and input new additional PM work orders, and we continue to clean that up. Next slide, please. Highlight a few of the projects we've been working on. So the department continues to support the upcoming roofing project, coating project, influent flow meter, and the LIMS implementation that Michael spoke of. Within the department, we've started doing some cleanup, and you can see some attached photos of the boneyard plant that has begun. We removed the BNR feed pump number 1 and its motor, and both went out for rebuild. We continue to work on the Lucy CMMS implementation and Logically implementation. We've now completed the secure care portion of the project. We're utilizing their help desk. We're now transitioning into our new firewall upgrade. Next slide, please. So a few photos of the projects. This is demolition photos of the old acid vapor exhaust system for the new roofing project that's coming. Coordinated with Brad Crane to remove this stuff and get it out of the way. Next photo, please. And this is some photos of the BNR influent pump removal and packaging it up for shipment. Again, both the motor and the pump are both out for rebuild. This is the first time they've been done since the installation, so it'll give us a good benchmark for the condition of the pump. The motor went out for rebuild because it went to ground, so we lost the windings on it. So that is what forced our hand on this project. But that wraps up the projects. Any questions for maintenance?
Any questions for Richard?
On that BNR pump, do you guys have one on the shelf in the interim while the one that
No.
you pulled out?
No, there's 3 pumps in the station, and typically operations only needs 1, so it's a 2+1 setup. So the spare is actually installed.
Great. All right, if there's no further questions, next would be Jay with the engineering department report.
Yeah, good morning again. Happy to report that the Headworks Improvements Project is complete. And also summer is marching forward, marching closer. Projects under construction, the chlorine scrubber improvements project, we're in the submittal phase. Roof repair project, we are also in the pre-construction submittal phase. As far as bidding, we have the plant coating project that's actually in contracting right now. The plant improvements project is bidding. The 2022 control room upgrades project was in today's packet that was discussed earlier. Next slide, please. And then projects in development, the digestion improvement study that's currently in study phase, 2022 digital scanning of sewer lines project that's in final design. You'll be seeing that next month. 2022 filter influent condition assessment study phase, and the TRI improvements project final design phase. Next slide, please. So just a report on one of our trainings that happened earlier in the month. The first responder team attended some confined space rescue operator training. So this is a hands-on 3-day course. It's actually, because of the 10-hour days, it was a 30-hour instruction course on basically how to do horizontal and vertical rescues from confined spaces. So this is something that the team trains on anyway, but this was taking it to a higher competence level. The Rocky Canyon Rescue instructor, Carrie Tuckett, was excellent. And we've got a lot of hands-on training. So just some photos here on the left, a lot of information gained on packaging patients onto various skids and devices for removal. On the right-hand side is photos shown. We've learned a lot in terms of knots and anchors and redundancy systems basically to rig up. So that was what you're seeing there is a rigging for a rappel off the side of one of our buildings. Next slide, please. And then more photographs. On the left is a picture of one of our vaults, and this was extraction of victims with SCBA tanks, both for the victim and ourselves as rescuers. And then on the right-hand side is a photograph of one of our rappelling exercises for vertical entries into confined spaces. So overall, great training. Yeah, that's all. I can take any questions anybody has.
Thanks, Jay. Any questions for Jay? Seeing none. Next on our agenda would be I believe, a report from Crystal.
So we are just continuing to wrap up the financial audit for FY21. And we then had the Finance Committee meeting on April 11th, which was actually a very good committee meeting. Next slide. Then for the Building Department, we had one commercial inspection at Carnelian Bay, 14 new connection fee permits, and then 13 new residential sewer service charge additions, 10 of them being at TSD, 1 at TCPUD, and 2 at Olympic Valley, all residential. Next slide. And then just continue conversations, mostly internal with LaRue, on investment and funding. And then we also completed the internal draft for the first round of the FY23 budget. Any questions?
Any questions from board members? Seeing none. Rochelle, is there any public comment on any of the department reports?
Sorry about that. There's no public comment for the manager reports.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is the general manager's report.
Thank you. I'll just hit a couple of highlights. We're logically support and security have been implemented now, so they're assisting us with our IT components. Our Skater Master IT plan is nearing a completion. We're expecting to get it done by May and to have a board presentation in June. Like Crystal had stated before, the agency continues with the preparation of the annual budget, so I want to thank everybody who's participated in that. We've had a recent staff meeting for the employee handbook update. It's been a couple years since we've done that. Since then, there's needed some points for clarification, so we're updating that accordingly. We did meet in person. That was nice to see everybody face to face in a room again. As to the supplemental paid sick leave that was just adopted not too long ago by the board and initiated by the state of California, we applied a credit of 655 hours to a total of 27 employees. Next slide, please, Michelle. Our recruitment status, I've been providing updates over the past months. So this will be the final one as all the positions have been filled at this time. I've also authorized the Truckee Running Festival, as it was a license agreement. We allowed them to utilize Georgia Road, Butterfield Drive, and the Legacy Trail. They do this every year. Unfortunately, over the past couple of years, it was not feasible due to COVID. But Big Blue Adventures, they're out of Tahoe City. They have set it up for this year. And that's to occur on June 4th. I did authorize an emergency purchase. It's for the roots replacement blower for the BNR unit process. The original blowers that were installed with the plant, we were having complications with them, meaning they weren't running as for a lifespan that we expected. So we did some modifications to accommodate a roots blower manufacturer, as well as an updated Tuthill blower, which is what the original manufacturer was. So when that roots blower went down, through discussions, we found out that the lead time on a new one was 20 weeks. It was too complicated to retrofit the roots blower to accommodate the new Tuthill blower. So we applied the emergency purchase, which allowed us to receive the unit in a shorter time period and get that train back in service. And as a matter of fact, it was received yesterday. So they're in the process of installing it today. And then as a follow-up to the Reno Aces game, which is occurring this Friday, we have a great turnout. We have purchased over 70 tickets for staff and family for that event. And I think that's going to be a great building event for the agency. And I think that concludes the GM report.
Great.
I can take any questions if there are any, Dan.
Great. Any questions for LaRue? All right. Seeing none, is there any public comment on the GM report?
There's no public comment.
Okay. Next is an opportunity for any comments from any of the board of directors. Anyone have any comments they'd like to make? Dale?
Yeah, just to back up a little bit on the confirmation or recommendation for Rick Stevens from the airport district to be on the LAFCO. This question is for LaRue and Dick. Do we have any in progress or unfinished business dealing with the airport and the land exchange and the easements and all the stuff that was on our plate here a year or so ago?
Yeah, I can address that. We're still in the process of the swap, for lack of a better word. So as it stood last time, the easement, the property boundaries the legal descriptions for the properties were being prepared by one of the local engineering firms here. I think it was Auerbach, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't received those, and the next step is once those are received, I would review those to make sure those were acceptable, as that was one of the requirements and procedural steps in the agreement. So we are proceeding with it, Dale.
So in answer to your question, LaRue, it sounds to me like we still have some legal issues and some negotiations that are being held with the airport district board of directors.
I don't think there's any negotiations. We actually have agreement in place, which dictates what the provisions of the agreement are, and we're just fulfilling it at this point.
Now, if we endorsed Rick Stevens to be a LAFCO representative that would somehow be addressing some of the issues from our member districts, would we be putting ourselves in any kind of legal cloud, counselor, endorsing the director from the airport?
No, you would not, Dale. It's a bit of a apples and oranges issue, representation on LAFCO and who you support and who you don't support. That would have no adverse or binding effect on TTSA's other relations with the airport district and its board.
Okay, no further questions.
You're muted, Tim.
Thank you. Looked like Blake had a question.
Not a question, just a director comment. Last week, myself and 3 other folks from TSD attended the California Water Environment Association's annual conference, CWEA. And it was a great experience, and learning opportunities, networking. And so I just want to encourage LaRue and you guys as board members on your respective member agencies to encourage your staff to participate at CWA. That's really the association that's out there for our kind of operations, maintenance, and engineers regarding the wastewater field. Encourage them to participate there at these conferences, and more specifically, encourage them to be involved at the local Sierra section. Mike, I know you are, Peak was a previous past president there. I think there was a lot of energy, I remember back there, that they seem to be struggling a little bit right now. And again, I think it's a great opportunity for our employees to get information, to network amongst different agencies, leadership opportunities for some of our staff. And Ray, Jay, I like seeing the slides of your training. The local Sierra section is also an opportunity where you can create economy of scale. I mean, the Alpines and Olympic Valleys of the world sometimes can't do trainings because you only got a couple employees that you need to send those to. But when you're involved in the local section, you know, you can be part of a larger training amongst all the agencies that we all need to do, because there's certain trainings that all of our agencies need to do. And so there's an economy of scale there. So just encourage your staff to be involved in the CWEA local section. And it was great to be back at a fully attended conference and see a lot of folks I hadn't seen. And there was some great take-home stuff that we're going to be implementing here at TSD. And so probably a lot of stuff treatment-wise also that is worth attending. So my comment.
Thanks, Blake. I have a comment. It's actually a follow-up on Dale's. I talked to Kevin Smith the other day. He's retiring as the general manager of the airport district. Some of you may have heard that, some of you may not have. I would strongly recommend, LaRue, that as it relates to this land exchange, that we as TTSA take a more maybe assertive role in pushing this along. I kind of get the sense we've been kind of sitting back and waiting for the airport to kind of take the steps that they're taking and just kind of leaving this on its own course, if you will. I think we need to start pushing it to make sure that it gets done sooner rather than later. And that would be my request.
Okay, understood.
And I think you could probably communicate with Hardy Bullock over at the airport district, given that Kevin's transitioning out, but you might want to touch base with Kevin just because he's going to be gone here in a couple of weeks, and kind of get a status update as to where things stand with the land exchange, and then also find out directly from Kevin who we should be communicating with next at the airport, and then see if we can get a schedule for making this happen.
Sure. Okay.
Thanks. Okay. Lane.
Yeah, I'd just like to say it was encouraging on Vicky's report to see the number of employees taking that interest in those safety procedures putting forth. That was quite a number of employees that are taking part in making TTSA a safer workplace. So I encouraged those employees that did it, and I just want to say thank you.
Thanks, Lane. Dave.
Along those same lines, I like the idea of that and how well it's working. I approve of that.
Great. Okay. If there's no further comments from the board, I believe that concludes our open session portion of the agenda, and we will now adjourn to closed session.